Right, let's get him in here. Mike Davis, I know we've only got you for one segment, but I've got to get your reaction to this breaking news. And, full disclosure, I did call Mike and let him know about the story just prior to the show here. The breaking news, though, that we have out that a grand jury has been impaneled in Western Pennsylvania and potentially looking at criminal charges in the Trump attempted assassination.
So the assassin's dead. So who could this grand jury be looking to investigate and indict? Are there other people involved with this assassination plot? Are they looking at family members under some theory of neglect with the gun? I'm not sure where this is heading, but it seems like there are other people involved in this assassination plot.
And so walk us through really quick, how does a grand jury work? Could the grand jury just be done for the purpose of issuing subpoenas, or is the grand jury always done with looking at potential targets?
Well, I mean, with the grand jury, you're looking at potential violations of criminal statutes, and so you just can't have roving grand juries to gather information. The investigation by the grand jury has to be in furtherance of the investigation of criminal activities, so you can go to charges, right? And if the assassin's dead, who are they investigating?
And that's something that I've been looking at. Look, so obviously we heard earlier this week that the father had lawyered up, and he's got this pretty high dollar, pretty high profile firm that they're looking at. And so that would be the biggest one that jumps out at me, because we have this information. I believe that was from Daily Mail. A family member had said so. But then again, and going back to the sort of Ethan Crumbley statute, we would then have to know, okay, what exactly was his involvement? Because if this was just neglect, there's been some reporting that the son had purchased the gun from his father, paid him money for it, but the father hadn't signed it over or something like that. That being said, though, where's the criminal liability if he didn't actually know that the attempt was going on?
Yeah, we have to be very careful about even insinuating that this father has committed a crime. I haven't seen any evidence that he's committed any crime. This son is 20 years old, so this father didn't have a legal duty as a parent for a 20-year-old son. Now, if there's an issue where there's known mental illness and there's known violence and this father gave him the gun, that's one thing, but we have to be very careful about this. Let's see where this investigation leads. Just because he hired an attorney doesn't mean that he's a target of any investigation. He may have just hired an attorney to be very careful when he's talking to investigators. As we discussed, Jack, he did call the police and alert the police about the son. I mean, maybe that shows he had some knowledge that the son was dangerous, or maybe it was after the fact. Let's just see where the facts are and not imply that this father's culpable for any crime.
Well, no, and certainly I wouldn't want to imply that either. My implication is simply trying to figure out where things go, and I'm going based off of the data that is coming out. And again, I'm not necessarily sure that, so they could be looking at the father, but again, my question is, if that were so, where's the criminal liability? Because as you say, he alerted the police that his son's whereabouts were suspicious. My question, of course, would be, if his son would just happen to be missing on a Saturday afternoon, 20 years old, and he knows that his son goes to the shooting range, the son had been at the shooting range the day before, why call police? Now, of course, he saw the video, and this was after the Trump shooting, so the father had some reason to believe that may have in fact been his son, and indeed that was the case. I suppose the question then would be, what was that indication? And that said, though, to your point, there, this could be they could be looking at the Secret Service agents, they could be looking at local police, and this would essentially be the standard of raising something from negligence to criminal negligence. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, you have to remember that Americans generally do not have a duty to stop crimes. They don't have a duty to rescue unless there is a specific duty upon you that, for example, if you have a duty to rescue because you're a parent, Just as a general matter, and you may have a moral duty, like if you see a kid drowning, you have a moral duty to jump in and save that kid from drowning, but you most of the time you don't have a legal duty, and that's kind of shocking for a lot of people in this father's case. Unless you can show that this father had some sort of obligation to intervene and stop his 20-year-old son from having this gun or even committing this crime. And we have to be very careful about that. There's a big difference between a moral duty and a legal duty.
And that said, so looking at the U.S. attorneys, I happen to look it up. So this U.S. attorney was appointed by Joe Biden. That means he does essentially fall under Merrick Garland. And this is the same Merrick Garland who hasn't exactly been forthcoming when it comes to, put it this way, he's a very partisan guy. I think you said things a little bit more spicy than that regarding Merrick Garland.
He's a total partisan hack. And we dodged a legal bullet by Mitch McConnell and my former boss Chuck Grassley blocking his appointment to the Supreme Court because he tried to pretend like he's this old school liberal, moderate liberal. He is a partisan activist who's done more damage to this country than any attorney general in our history by politicizing and weaponizing the Biden-Kamala Justice Department to go after Trump, his top aides like Steve Bannon, who's sitting in prison right now, Peter Navarro, who went to prison, Trump's lawyers, John Eastman, Jeffrey Clark, Rudy Giuliani. He politically persecuted Trump supporters on January 6th. And I don't say that lightly, but the Fisher decision out of the Supreme Court recently just made very clear that Merrick Garland politicized, weaponized, contorted a post-Enron obstruction of justice statute intended to go after corporate fraud, to go after Trump and Trump supporters on January 6th. We just saw this with Jack Smith's superseding indictment against Trump. Merrick Garland had to personally sign off on that. And this superseding indictment by Jack Smith, after Jack Smith got smoked at the Supreme Court, he's coming back like he didn't lose the Fisher case. The Biden Justice Department didn't lose the Fisher case, and Jack Smith didn't lose the presidential.
Just more election interference. Mike Davis, thanks for jumping on last notice. Really appreciate it.